Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Cheeky Natives. This is a very special episode. It's our first episode since Letlhogonolo has been back from the US of A, and we're coming to you live from Mrs. Naidu's house.
Hi everyone, Letlhogonolo, fresh from the boat, back from the US, and it's really interesting because when we agreed to do the podcast, we didn't know necessarily that it's Youth Month, so it seems quite important for us to be doing this particular review and this particular episode on Youth Month. So today we have a very special and wonderful guest. We have Clinton Chauke, who wrote a very interesting and intriguing and really necessary memoir called Born in Chains. And we'll be in conversation with him about his book and, particularly about some aspects in his book. But before we do that, we'd like him to read just a little bit from his memoir, and then we'll dig right into it.
Okay. I studied for the whole year without paying the university, so I was in debt. I was very hungry for success, but during that year, I was physically hungry too. It was difficult to study and do well when you had an empty stomach, and added to that, we're not going to see your results at the end of the semester. I knew that I was paying the price of fitting into previously white spaces that had suddenly become accessible for all. This is the problem that born frees face today. We try so hard to access these white spaces, but staying in them seems like mission impossible. In the end, I had to write 2 supplementary exams. This didn't sit well with me. Moving from being a top achiever to a supplementary student, I was very frustrated.
Sure. I mean, we need to just take a moment for that passage.
Right.
That is a passage that, for me personally, took me aback. I had to put the book down and just reflect,
Right.
The first question we normally ask people on our podcast is, who is Clinton?
Oh, okay. Which is a very difficult question to answer because, I haven't done or achieved a lot of things. But Clinton Chauke is a young man who, grew up and who was born actually in 1994, which was the turning point in our country's, political arena. Is the year that we got democracy. So I was born in that year, and I wrote a book, in fact, Born in Chains, explaining my upbringing, the way I grew up, my experiences in the places that I stayed in. So yeah, that's what I'm all about.
So you're 24, and some people might argue that it's quite brave to write a memoir at 24.
Yes.
Why did you decide to write your memoir at this particular point in your life?
Well, when I read the books, I read the books by older people, and most of the time they, talk about their times when they were still young, how they were active and everything, but we tend not to believe them, or they tend not to be credible enough. So I decided to write while, I'm not established, I'm not there, so I'm still going through a lot of things, growing, trying to find myself as well as a young man. But so I thought if I could reflect at this age, and give a perspective to other young people, other dreamers, to maybe learn from my story and be awakened if they were not.
I mean, it's interesting, the title of your book and even the cover of your book is quite provocative, right? So the title of your book is called Born in Chains. And I mean, for people who don't necessarily know what the book is about, because I have both read the book, so we know what it's about. Why did you choose this provocative title?
Well, yeah, I wrote my book, and then I was doing an analysis, checking it and trying to find the themes, and I realized that throughout the text, I realized that there was chains everywhere, and I was like, this one, would work best to say Born in Chains, and not to leave it there, but to also try to explain to somebody who hasn't read the book, that this is the diary of an angry born free, because it was more like I kept a diary, so I was just reflecting on those moments that I had.
So your book is called Born in Chains, and it's the diary of an angry born free. Why are you an angry born free?
Well, I'm angry because, the politicians, I'm angry mostly because of the politicians. They make me more angry because they like to use this word born free, in time to score political points and to tell us that, there has been progress in this country and things are getting better. But I mean, like, we are on the ground, we are living, and we realize that, our life experiences are not different to the people who were born before us, who were born in 1994. So, that's why I'm more angry, because people like to romanticize these things. And then when you explain that, poverty is real, we're still struggling on the ground, they can't understand. So that's what makes me angry. And also the things that are in the book as well, there are a lot of things that...
I mean, before we go to like some of the substance in the book and some of the themes you cover in the book, I found the form in which you wrote the book quite interesting.
Right.
So I wanted to know, was it intentional? So, there are certain instances and throughout the book where you write some parts of it in your home language. And I wanted to know if it's intentional that you wrote it in the way that you did.
Yeah, everything was intentional. From the language to the tone, I use humor most of the time. There are difficult moments and there are difficult chapters, so it's part of my personality. I like to laugh around when I'm with people, and when I'm telling my story, I thought that I would add that to my story as well. And then the language as well, and I wanted to write it in Tsonga, but I realized that I wouldn't be talking to like chicken natives now, right now, because it's not dominant. So but I wanted to remain true as well to the places and the languages that shaped me and how I grew up. So everything was intentional.
So there's your book. As we get into the book, you cover a very interesting journey, right? Because in your book you move from, I think a lot of Black people can identify with this constantly being in a migratory status. He's always moving somewhere in the book, know. So you move from having been in a rural area, you come back to living in an urban area, you move from an urban area, you sort of move up, And in writing this book, what were some of the reflections that because you've written the book, you had a chance to reread it.
Right.
And what were some of the reflections that you made about your journey? Because I mean, it was you were always in transits. As we read the book, you're always going somewhere, trying to do something, moving to the next level. What were some of the reflections that you've made on this journey?
Well, in terms of the movement, I think that's the life of Black people. We had like the homelands and the urban areas where we have the opportunities are, the jobs and everything. So for me, I think it has been more of a blessing that we have moved, although we moved not in the good circumstances, not in the fun part of it. But at the end of the day, I had to appreciate the fact that, when you travel and when you move around, you tend to learn more. You tend to get a lot of perspective from other people, and you tend to learn that, as human beings, we share certain, qualities, and those are the things that I have learned, that there are universal qualities that we all share. We all wanna, live good lives. We all wanna be loved. We all wanna, succeed. All those sort of things are recurring wherever, regardless of wherever you are. So that's what I actually got from.
Have you been to Bevula since you wrote this book?
Yes, I've been to Bevula.
And do you plan to take the book back?
Yeah, I was planning to do so, but I will see. My publisher said they're planning to donate some books to the schools that I went to. So I think that would be a great initiative. I'm planning to do that. But the sad reality about Bevula and stuff is that people are not they're not literate. It's sad. It's not my fault. It's not my fault anyway. People are illiterate. Some won't be able to enjoy it as much as you've enjoyed. They will be like, okay, you wrote a book and that's it. They won't understand, what I was trying to achieve, in the book. That's the sad reality about it. But I will try to reach out, to all these places.
Before we even get to the content of the book, right? You said something really interesting now. You said, for people to enjoy the book. And one of the questions that I had reading the book is, it seems that there are various audiences that you're writing for. When you were writing this memoir, who was the intended audience? Was it the people who are like you, labeled as born free? Or was it people who, the older generation? We always continuously have a fight with the older generations about we had more opportunities than they have, so we should be grateful. Or was it also for white people who don't actually know that we actually in South Africa today we're living in poverty. So who was it for?
Yeah, the audience was for all South Africans. Obviously, in the book, I said that it's mostly for young and especially those who are black. But overall, I think I wrote it, for everybody to learn from, and the specific messages that I'm direct, regarding certain people. But the book is inclusive to all, genders, all races. The white people as well, because that's something we're launching, for example, last week in Cape Town, and some people were clueless about these experiences. So they were like, wow, man, thank you so much for putting it out there for us to learn, and maybe we can try to improve from that. And that's why I wrote it for everybody, but my target market was more of the young people, my fellow young people, to learn, basically.
Speaking about inclusivity, right? There's a lot of important themes in the book, but tribalism comes up often.
Right.
So I mean, you leave Limpopo, you move to Pretoria. You leave Pretoria, you come to Joburg, but tribalism comes up often in the book.
Right.
Why did you, as a Tsonga man, feel that it was so important for you to really write deeply about the theme of tribalism, even as a born free?
Yeah, I mean, every writer, if I may put it that way, they've got a conflict inside them. If you wanna write, you wanna get something out of you, that you are battling with for a long period of time, and with me as well, it was, it was the case. Obviously, I battled, about Amashanga and how we are treated and the stereotypes and everything. So obviously, it's something that you are defined by that thing. You grew up being defined by that. Where especially in the urban areas where I grew up, we were defined by us being Shangans more than anything. So I was like, why is that? Why can't we look at each other as people? And that's why I try to, highlight it and then try to tackle how we can, get past that. So yeah, that.
And have you, just to add to that point, what have been some of the reactions from Tsonga people post you writing this book, because tribalism is not something that we speak about often as black people. We exist, we know it exists, we acknowledge it sometimes, but it's not something we speak about often. And here you are, a young, born free, in this rainbow nation that really shouldn't be affected by these things. And you're writing about having such intimate experiences with tribalism and I think to another extent colorism as well.
Yeah, true.
So what have been some of the reactions to you writing about those themes?
Well, the reaction has been enormous from the people that I've met so far. Some, they'll be like, it's something that I've been thinking about, but I didn't know how to confront. So it has been like a hero welcome. Yesterday, we were launching in Rosebank, and I met this young lady who is working as a bookkeeper, and she's from Bevula, by the way. And she was like, she reminded me, of those times in Bevula, but I was still very young. So I was like, you were naughty, and I still remember you. So I was so glad when I was reading the book. So she felt represented. She was like, I can't believe that somebody wrote this thing. So people are represented, and when I looked at our literature everywhere, but Tsonga people are not represented that much because of oppression. As I said before, that oppressed people can't really express themselves. So in doing that and trying to put the language there, I wanted to say, it's fine being who you are. You should embrace that. You shouldn't listen to what other people are saying. So I did that intentionally, and I think it worked so far. From the people that I've met, they are very happy, they feel represented, and they feel whole again, if you put it that way.
I think the topic of representation is important, right? We've seen with Black Panther and all the movies that have come, how we've started celebrating. So I think in some ways, even Tsonga people would be very happy that you've written this book and that they can find their language in the book, And that was something really startling for me, because my best friend is Tsonga.
Oh, okay.
And when I was reading the book, I kept messaging her to be like, oh my gosh, I can read this because of you, right? I think that it's very important, because I agree with the sentiments that you share. I think in the literary space, we don't, either people don't identify also because of tribalism, so they don't come out and say, I'm Tsonga, or there aren't enough people who are Tsonga who are writing, right? What I also really enjoyed about you writing in the book is lifting up Tsonga people. So you speak about the musicians, you speak about, the country's fave Penny Penny, and you speak about like how back at home, this is what you're doing, you always play traditional Tsonga music. So I think I really enjoyed that bit, because it was like, you were lifting up the voices of these people to be like, we aren't just a people that are inferior. We've actually contributed to the culture, to the history of this country.
True.
A question that I had related to tribalism is you tackle quite powerfully in the book questions of xenophobia as well, and incidents of xenophobia. So do you want to just like talk us through like some of the experiences you've had as a South African experiencing xenophobic violence?
I mean, it leads to when we had like xenophobic attacks in 2008. That was the biggest, I think, before the one that we had in 2015. And that was the moment, where it was real, because, other times before that, it's just discrimination, and what. But now in these xenophobic attacks, like people were attacked, physically, and some unfortunately lost their lives. And not only the foreigners, but also people who were born and bred in this country, but because of their skin tones and their appearances, they were dubbed in as the foreigners. So that was a very challenging thing. So I wanted to give a voice, to those people, and also give, some sort of a conscience to say, who are we as a people? Are we gonna destroy one another because, we don't look the same? So I was trying to challenge those narration, and as well, me being, Tsonga and being, dark skinned, it was also a threat to my life, so it was a real thing. And in the book, I didn't shy away from that. I put that, succinctly.
I mean, I remember I'm not jokingly now, because your life may have been threatened, but there's an incident where a police officer stops you.
Yes.
She speaks to you in what you say is broken English, right? And you answer in isiZulu. And because you aren't Zulu first speaking, she thinks, you're just trying to play. So she asks you where your passport is, right? I thought that was quite pointed. The fact that like she didn't ask for an ID, you just like asked for a passport. So showing that she assumed that you were foreign.
True, she was definitely sure that I was foreign, and because that was in Johannesburg, like in Park Station, and that's when I was in UJ. So what happened? She came. She was convinced, that I was foreign. I grew my hair and everything, and I didn't bath that day.
So maybe that's the problem.
So rest life. So so that's. But I mean, it starts from the top. I mean, she get that order from, the higher position. So it goes back from government. How we profile people, how we exercise our authority and stuff.
Also think you straddled very many identities in this book, right? And it's particularly interesting because you in the passage you just read from, you were talking about how you were in these previously white spaces, but you're constantly reminded of your blackness,
right.
And constantly reminded of where you come from. So how are you straddling these different identities? Because we see other people who look like you having this conflict. I mean, Rulani is also Tsonga, you're in high school together, but Rulani doesn't want to accept, or he distances himself from being Tsonga, and you come here and you're proudly Tsonga, but you're in Atteridgeville, so you're also a Kasi boy, and then you come to UJ and you also want to be a Riz boy, and it's this idea that black people can have multiple identities, and it's not a monolithic culture, Tsonga people are not just Benny, or you can be a Shoma Josie, or you can be a Bob Mabena, or and so for me really the question is how are you balancing all of these different identities that you hold now, because now you've done the Born Free thing, you've gone to UJ, you've gotten your qualification, so one can argue that you're not the same person that you were in Bevula, for example, and you're not the same person that you were in Atteridgeville. There's different identities that you now hold. Well,
what I've learned for myself is actually it was more of understanding, being aware of my environment. When there's a saying that when you're in Rome, you do what the Romans do. So what happens now when I still go back to all these places. I don't really shy away. I still go to the township. I still go to Bevola. I still go to visit some of my friends at UJ. And when I'm in those spaces, I behave more like, like when I'm kokasi, like I don't come with a snobbish attitude. I'm like Majita, XA, whatever, and when I visit my, friends who stay like in suburbs and everything, I try to, be
to
like,
use your inside voice.
To be snobbish, and I use big words, dress, accordingly. When I go to Pevola, I still do the same things. I still go and get water, like a wheelbarrow, a grivani, and, be like a village boy, so I don't really try to show, myself, I'm coming from this, I'm exposed to that. So I try to wave around and, blend with everyone. So I'm still like a chameleon, if I were to put it
Which
that
is
way.
interesting about the precarity of black lives, right?
Yeah.
Like thinking about the fact that, Elma, if you enter your mom's house, you're not a doctor in your mom's house. You're Elma. Like, don't come here with your qualifications, right?
Exactly.
So, like, who cares about your qualification? I'm sending you because that is like how blackness works, right?
But that's not a reality that white people will ever have to encounter. It's because white people, the way the world is structured, white people get to be themselves.
True.
Wherever they go. So you, for example, I could never come to my mother's house and be like, "Yeah, mom, so like that." That's. But that's also an identity that I hold. It's not a separate identity. It's an identity that I hold. But it's not an identity that I could freely exhibit in the way that white people have room to just be. To be themselves in the fullness of their identity. There's no need for them to code switch, so they don't have to be and then like a burb person and then be in corporate South Africa because their identity is accepted as being the baseline.
And you tackle quite a lot of this in your book as well, speaking about the idea of, as you've read in your passage, existing in these white spaces because now it's access for all. So because I think that it's an important conversation to have, especially when we talk to our white counterparts, right? That the idea that, look, South Africa is anti-black. It was founded on anti-blackness. So wherever we go, we have to be chameleons, so to say, because I can't be the same person that I am in the classroom or that I am in the boardroom, because like
Sure.
Like, why must I be like, oh la di da, using big words? Because nobody cares about my big words, right?
Or be a doctor and come with the medicine jargon. People but I think that's an important point that you raise, Letlhogonolo, that I think you talk that white people, this world was handed over to them, so they are themselves. You can see it even in the workplace, wherever. They play their music and it's normal. But if I come and play Penny Penny, people will be like, and then, like, can you turn it off? But Oscar disappoint. I mean, like, but people, they speak their language and they listen to their music. So yeah, it's sad, man, to be a black. I can say so. It's very sad because it's a cultural battle and in some ways dominant.
Speaking of being black and the sadness that comes with being black in this country, I think you touch on a lot of important themes. And the one thing we were discussing earlier is how you get by in high school. You don't do great, but you do better than your counterparts who look like you, right? And you go
and just to add, like, you were very brave to like display your matric marks in the book. You're just like, this is what I got. This is what I got.
You got how many B's? and
there's no A there.
But you go to university, and already you are the exception in your community, because the fact that you can list among your circle of friends who went to university, or among the people you're in high school with, speaks to just
3, right?
Yeah,
so
it's like the minority, it's the twins,
the twins, precious, success, and
that's it. And the fact that we even remember their names, how few of them they were. Then you get to university and you excel. And then there's an important conversation that you have about resources and how you flourish at university as opposed to how you were struggling at high school. Can you just expand on that, because I think it's such a powerful topic.
I mean, as I said, the politicians, again, I will go back to the politicians, I'm sorry. They will tell you that, there is free education, equal education and everything, but the reality is not. When you go to, like, a high school in Bevula, for example, it's not the same as the high school in Attridgeville, and also in Attridgeville, when you go to the pubs, it's still inferior. So but they say they are all, government schools. They are all, but it's not. And the community in which one grows up in, it influences, your progress in class. I mean, like, it's where I used to stay. I used to go and get water, like in a Jojo tank, ka wheelbarrow, in a mountain, and I have to do my homeworks afterwards. I have to get as well, a lot of things. So like,
don't forget to play.
Yeah, don't forget to play. I mean, like, that's it. So I mean, sometimes our electricity, like, it's June now, they cut off electricity. There's no electricity. You have to use the primer stove. So obviously, on an academic level, where do you find the time to study? Where do you find the time to focus? Because, like, you have to be in a certain mood, first and foremost, and then I was joyous to music and then, like, you can't make it, man. You can't make it. So the cycle becomes, it's a vicious cycle, as Malcolm X said. So yeah, it's sad that it's post 1994, 23 years later, but we still have those, that's inferior education, the quality of education, the content of what we are taught as well in those schools. They are very, very poor. You don't get access to resources. Like, we had a little computer center, but we never used that. We only used it to open, like, a Gmail, like, as I said in the book, and it's not a joke. That was it. So it's very sad. So when you get to university, you get exposed to Wi-Fi, like, YouTube, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I can take the world. And that's where I got to produce good marks in my first year.
I mean, you were quite honest in the book, right? Like, I think that what I really enjoyed about the book is how visceral you are about the reality. I was reading it to my housemate, and I was saying to her, like, the interesting thing is that we know these people. These people are us, these people are our friends. Like, this story is not like, you're talking earlier about, like, white people are like, oh, thank you for writing this book and thank you for teaching us. I'm like, no, we don't need to be taught, right? This is the reality of Black lives in South Africa. So it's hard, man, that we're still writing books to educate people. Even some 20 plus years after democracy.
Yeah, that's it.
Right, that the situation may be slightly better because of but it's not better because there are still people in Attridgeville.
True.
There's still people who still use the wheelbarrow to get water in Bevula.
Definitely.
I mean, one thing that you touch you speak a lot about your family and your family dynamics and, like, the migration that happened between your family. And I was really struck by how you portray your mother. And I just want to read this piece because guys, you say here, looking back at my mother's life, I wonder if they will ever erect a statue in her honor. I'm very skeptical about them ever renaming one of the streets in the city after her. I doubt she will make it to the greatest South African book. I don't know if the kids at school will ever learn about her. I have no hope that they will ever make 22 January a public holiday, her birthday, of course. In my life, I've never met anyone with greater integrity, perseverance, strength, and intellect, or a better work ethic than her. To this day, my mother remains a constant pillar of strength. And that, like, reminds me of the story of my mom, right? Like, Black women in our lives are not necessarily college educated or high school educated, but the magic that these Black women can weave out of it. And I wanted to know, like, for you to expand, you do quite a bit in the book, but to speak about the relationship that you particularly have with your mom, and, like, when you wrote this particular chapter you titled "The Sacrifices of My Mom," like, just to speak to that.
Yeah, first and foremost, for me, in this book, like, there are some chapters when I wrote them and they go to me. Like, that one was the hardest. So after writing it, like, I had to get something strong. But man, I think my mom she's the one who, she had ideas. she perseveres, man. And I think even writing this book, I had her in mind to say, what can I give back to her, in a country where, or in a place where, she sacrificed everything. She went through a lot of things, but she always kept, hope. She always motivated us, regardless of the circumstances at home. Like, we didn't have resources, we didn't have a lot of things, but because of her love and her tender heart, we never felt that way, as children. It's only when we began to grow up, to understand life and everything, where we reflected. With my sister, sometimes we sit and we're like, oh, mom, even when she's not there, we're like, yeah, she has done a lot, and she doesn't give up, and I remember when she started working, at one job, she had to like volunteer for like 3 months or so. So she was working without getting paid, and hoping that she will get the job. And the job was not the lucrative job, it was domestic work, but she never gives up. And that, I think I got that from her. And when I say she's the pillar of my strength, like, she's really is a pillar of my strength, because sometimes I do things, and I'm like, I'm tired, I'm like, I want to give up, but then I think about my mom, the sacrifices that she made for us, and that she continues to make. So she gives me that hope. But as you say, her story is not, separate from the other stories of the other mothers who are working domestic work, and they get paid little, they're treated, they're ill-treated, and but still, they still provide for their children. So they are not celebrated, they are not, when you go to town, you find the Lillian Gois and all those guys who were, bless them, I mean, we celebrate them, but we don't get the statues of those people who are celebrated, to say, what, against all odds, she raised her children, she did this, she sacrificed, she took her child to do, she's a doctor today, and stuff like that. So, like, I was trying to celebrate all the working people on the ground, and not only her, you can only pick that, but all the mothers who are working very hard out there.
Speaking of women, women feature sort of prominently in your book,
Right.
different relationships, which we'll get into.
Right.
I was particularly fascinated by the relationship that you have with your sisters, so
Right.
Akani and Zakani.
Right.
And I think you've now had a time to read the book and reflect.
Right.
What are some of the reflections that you've had on sort of the relationship that you've had? I mean, you describe how your sister sort of is the model of black tax. She has to help you when you're at university. She doesn't really get to pursue what she wants to do because she needs to get a job and look after her family.
True.
So what are some of the reflections that you've had about your relationship with your sisters now that you're a little bit older and you get to look at them using a different lens?
Yeah, for me, they are like everybody in my household. They motivate me, but my sisters, they motivate me in what sense? They lay the ground for me, because even when we were growing up, like my mom would always tell us that, you know what, you are the older one. She will tell Akani that you are the older one, which means you're gonna go to university, you work, you help Akani works, helps you, and then you're gonna reap all the benefits from these guys. So I think it kind of like worked that way. The guys remained patriotic, and they came back. They never went away with the little that they got. Zakani, she couldn't complete her diploma at TUT, so she had to be a nurse, and then she settled for that, and the whole family started to be dependent on her. And bless her, she provided, like she carried the family because she was getting better salary. So she sacrificed a lot. And yeah, man, I'm humbled by them, and that it is even today that when I write a book, I celebrate. Like I feel like I'm liberated because they walked the path for me. So I feel that they didn't do what they wanted to do. In their lives they had dreams and aspirations, but they said, no, what, we're gonna sacrifice for this, and pass it on. And so for me, writing this book was part of expressing my freedom to say I can do whatever that I wanna do, because I'm no longer burdened with there's no one coming after me, and the guys that kind of like did well for themselves. So I'm like, I can use my talent, whatever talent that I have, to express myself, and I express myself through a book, and it is through them though I'm really thankful.
Another interesting relationship that comes through in the book,
right,
which Am and I were talking about earlier, is the relationship with your father. Right, but also like maybe in some ways a commentary between the relationship you have with democracy. So do you want to speak to the relationship that you have with your father? Because it's not a linear, straightforward relationship, right? Yeah.
But I think it goes back to the experiences of the mothers who work and, they sacrifice a lot and everything. So, but with my father, it was a little bit different because my father, he was not a fan. I would say he was not a fan of working, and he was more of an activist. Should I say an activist? Or he had a point, when he would explain that, I'm not going to go and work for another man, all those kind of things. And sometimes, he would quit his job and be like, I can't be treated like that. But it goes back to, being treated, from what I analyze and understand right now, being treated like a baby at work, and you end up feeling like you can't go on, So with all his reasons, the roles were reversed, as I said in the book. Like, you would wake up, my mom would wake up and go to work, and my father would be like remaining in the house. So with that, the roles were reversed. And obviously there were quarrels, because that's not normal in society. So yeah, but I appreciate my father. I think he represents all the fathers he's a true representative of all the fathers in Kokasi and all the sort of things. Because and I when I say I appreciate him because he was there at home, I really mean it, because sometimes our friends that we used to play with, some of their fathers never came back home. Some came back. I
was telling Alma earlier, she's like, I must get my dad a birthday gift.
Father's Day
gift. I'm like, I don't have a father, so I don't even know when these dates are.
True. Some people are like, if I only knew him. Some people don't even have a feeling of having a father. So I appreciate, him for being there and knowing that he's my father with all his imperfections. And because as human beings, we are all flawed. So it's all about tolerating and appreciating. Even now, we still have a good relationship. Like I just spoke to him on the phone.
So speaking of fathers,
right?
There's the spirit of community comes out often in this book. Not just in your own family, but in the grannies that look after you guys. You have your guardian that you live with when you're in Bevula. But I'm particularly interested in the fathers because we see your father who's not the textbook idea of what we think a father should be, but there are people who really step in and fill the gap, so Pastor Koza makes a feature in the book, there's a lot of, I'm curious as to what do you think the impact is of for young black men to have these male role models, because yes, you can have a father who may not be present or who may not be whatever, but you spent a lot of time in the book speaking about, the male figures that you had and the ways in which they allow you to define your own masculinity.
Right.
So I'm curious about those kind of relationships and how you think they've shaped.
Yeah, I think that's something that we have. It's a good thing that we have in our social setup as black people, because we look after each other. Our communities are close to one another. We don't build, these huge walls that you find, when you go to certain communities. So in that way, a neighbor makes it a point that, he provides the guidance to the son next door. So it was the same case with me, in the institutions that I went to, like obviously at church, of which I later reject the notion
which we will talk about
of which I later reject. But those community, those institutions and organizations, if they can be made to be what they were meant to be, they can be useful, because that's where some people find mother, some people find family, overall. So that's where I also found in my teachers, at church, and as I go on in my career as well, I met like men figures who provided like that thing that I never had with my father. Right.
I mean,
Church.
now we're gonna go on the topic of church.
I thought you wouldn't go there.
No, we have to.
We have to go there because you go from being like a convert.
Yeah, then
so
you're there.
attending Bible study.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point in the book, Clinton was going to church like 5 times a week.
Yeah, it's only program every day.
Like,
but I think what's interesting is at the beginning of the book, you speak about the relationship that your parents have towards church, right?
Right.
So your dad is not necessarily someone who is churchy.
It's my hero.
So your dad is it's very like we must stick to our traditional ways of doing things, right?
Yeah.
And your mom joins ZCC, the Zionist Christian Church, and you as children are also going to this church. So for some stint in your life, you're also at the Zionist Church, which amalgamated African traditions and religion to some extent, right? So you spend some bit of time in that. But there's a particular place where you like, you reject, you like the notion of Christianity is white. So you say it's Western, right?
Yeah, it's Western.
And then later on in the book, Motukio Oya Church.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every
6 times
day.
a week.
Every day.
He only takes Saturday off.
Yeah.
What faster?
What's it again?
So
20 out of 21 days.
So tell us tell us about your journey with religion. Tell us about your journey with religion.
And where you are now.
It's been interesting. Where I am now, okay. It's a very interesting thing. I mean, look, we all grew up at church like at some point because that's what we are taught, unless you are an elite or whatever. And then, but if you grew up like where I grew up, like you are told that church is this, there's God, there's this, there's that. But I was like fortunate enough in my household because we had like different views, pertaining religion. My father, as you said, he was an African, traditional guy, and my mother was at ZCC. Then my sisters found like Bazalwane, and then there were Bazalwanis. And then I was sweeping all around. I was exposed to both worlds. When my father went to Bevula to speak to his parents who are deceased, I would go with him, and then I would go with my mom to ZCC. Then my sisters took me to go his rest, and then so at the end of the day, I had to make a conclusion to myself to say, which side are you in? Because I was always drawn, in both worlds. And at some point I thought, at his rest, that's it. I give it clearly, that's why I was committed. I was going to church like every day of the week, like a Sunday, and I was participating, and everything was well. But as I grew up, and realized, tried to analyze what does this thing mean to me, and I had to define it for myself, and I realized, I don't really need religion. Because I think it's good for morals, but I mean, like, we had morals before. I mean, so it's a very sensitive topic. But I believe that religion is used for mind control. When you look at apartheid, it was a religious ideology, according to me. And believing that one race was inferior and the other one was superior. And then when you read the Bible as well, it doesn't give it allows anything, so anyone can use the Bible for their own benefit, in my opinion. And I reject that and say, why can't we be human beings? We don't need written laws to know what is right and what is wrong. Treat me as you want to be treated, and I will treat you like that. Treat you with respect and dignity. See people as human beings, not as some demon or spirits. We are flawed. We don't know what happens when you die. That's a fact. And there are some people who are working on to find out what happens, and we should respect those people. I mean, you're a doctor, so you should be knowing that facts. We investigate facts. So you shouldn't come and tell us, or how you're gonna go this place and what. It's just imaginary, but that is the truth. That is in a most respectful way. That is the truth. But we find hope. We can find hope in in this religion thing. But my problem with Africans is that everybody has remained faithful to their religion. The Hindus, they worship their Hindu deities. The Rastafarians, they worship Jah. The Muslims, they worship Allah. All these people have got their gods, and Africans as well, as my father taught me. We used to worship the ancestors and everything. But then, now we are told that our God is a demon. We have to do so, like those kind of things. Those arguments, they also made me to stay away from, to stay away from church. But it's not like I if they invite me there, I go. But like on Sundays, I no longer go to church. I no longer see the value of that, because like it is no longer intended to be what it was. Because if you can define what is church, it was in congregation. 2 or 3 people gathering. And fellowshipping. But now it's more about status, more about who dress best. We give people money. And it's so wrong. Like in my personal capacity. So I'm no longer a religious person, but I respect other people's religions. I'm not one to say we're cricking. No, I won't do that. But for my personal experience, I just I chose to treat people as they are, and treat them as I want them to treat me.
So speaking of your personal experiences, you touch a little bit on education in the book, so not even a little, it's quite an important theme in the book. And you touch a little bit on your working life, because we see you go and you meet these mentors, and they in a house similar to the one we're in now.
Right.
And how have you found the transition? Because we didn't get too much of that in the book,
Right.
The transition from being a student to working. I mean, particularly with the fact that you've become woke, so now you're seeing the inequalities. Utsugile, so you're seeing the inequalities, you're seeing the ways in which the system continuously holds black people back, and now you make this transition to getting this thing where you can buy a nice car and a house. Right. How just describe that transition for us.
Well, for me, I'm really, to be honest, if I were to be honest with you, I'm really scared to enter into this, new world that is being presented to me, or that I'm going to. Part of me wants to stay kokasi and live a normal life, even if I can get a lot of money in the long term. But I'm afraid to go into this, previously white spaces like the suburbs and everything, because I've seen, people who came from nothing, and now they're staying in those places, and their attitudes are so bad, that they're like, oh, we are looking, like yo, like but they come from those, communities, and my point is so I'm afraid that might I might end up being there as well. So I'm at that transition stage where I'm not sure where I wanna go. I don't think it's a sin to confess that, but I'm really, because now I'm staying amongst those people and I'm living that kind of life, but I don't like what it can make you, because the environment can actually influence you. So yeah.
I mean, for me, I think I struggled with the end of the book.
Right. A lot of people.
Yeah, I struggled with the end of the book, because like you're so angry throughout the book, right? You're angry at the system. You're dishing as you're like wabaha, right? And then you're like, well, you know what? We should stop blaming apartheid. We are all people. Right. So I felt challenged by that, right?
Yeah.
Because I was just like, I don't know, like, so I want to know, why did you end the book in that manner? Because like you could have just left us and be like, you know what, racism, tribalism, but you went back and you circled back in like, actually, I understand people say that apartheid is a problem, but we shouldn't blame it.
Yeah, true. I mean, it all goes back to who you are as an individual. I would like to think of myself as an optimist, and I believe that if you lose hope, all else is lost. And for me, I always kept the hope. Like I've always read about the great guys, their biographies, and I've realized their life stories, and I've realized what anger and frustration can do to one. So I've chosen to be optimistic, to say things will get better. Obviously, these things that I talk about, they are very now, they're very recent. I mean, they're recent. A lot of things are sakhal, they're just now, and they're still existing, and they will still exist. And for me to say that apartheid was, let's forget about it. It's just to give that refreshing, a reader who is optimistic, to say, not all else is lost. There's space for improvement, there's space for progress, there's space for integration. I mean, like the new kids now, but the skateboard, black and white, they're coming alright. So we can.
They're gonna be right.
Yeah, we're gonna be alright. Yeah, so I believe that the course of history doesn't just change overnight. To make it work, you have to give it time. So we can't expect things to be normal and to be to reach this heaven place that we've all dreamed of, where black and white are on the same playing field. It won't happen overnight, and we have to accept that. We have to accept the reality, but not lose hope, or things are bad. We'll never get the land and all those sort of things.
We are getting the land.
We are definitely getting the land.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. What do you hope to have achieved with this book? I mean, so there's I don't know. I was telling Letlhogonolo that when I was reading this book, I was just getting mad,
really?
The whole time, because I could not believe that. I could believe it, but I mean, I think it's different to know something and to see it in print. It's a completely different experience, So the idea that for the average, even someone in an urban area, is still going to be climbing hurdles, and then there will be people who have the audacity to say to young black people, why are you complaining? Apartheid happened a long time ago. Let's all get over it. Was maddening to me, because the idea that we're still having to perform our poverty over and over again, be it for NASFAS, or when we're performing for the government to believe that we deserve decent sanitation, that, maybe it's not okay for black people to be so squashed in shacks that you have to give birth at home because there's no ambulance that's going to get into that area, So I was very angry when I was reading. I wasn't angry, not so born free, but I was angry.
Just before.
But I
negotiation time.
They should have told us. So I just wanted to know, I mean, what you speak about optimism, and you speak about being hopeful, which towards the end of the book there is somewhat, but what did you hope to achieve having written the book? The book is out, it's in print, everyone's reading it,
Everyone should be reading it.
Everyone should be reading it.
Yeah.
What did you hope to achieve? What do you hope someone will walk up to you and say, Clinton, I read the book and it gave me this?
Well, number one, I think you've already answered that one. To put matters into perspective, into context. When people see Batu Bastreka go on the streets, they tend to be like, without understanding the root cause of what. So I wanted to put things into perspective, or if you've read, you understand the frustration of somebody. And then another thing is because of the hope, to keep the hope. As I said, or if you lose hope, all else is lost. So in the book, I try to be hopeful as a character, as I evolve through Kabevola, Mshongo, and working and all those sort of things, to give hope that even in a hopeless situation, in abject poverty, as I grew up in, you can make something out of yourself. If you self-reliance and individual initiatives, they are also key. So that's what I wanted to portray, that if you feel that you're not gonna get the land or whatever, you can actually get the land of your own, if not collectively, because you understand.
I mean, it's interesting because I think the book also touches on the resilience of black lives, right? But it also speaks about like how we exist in structures that weren't created for us, that we really exist still even after democracy in an anti-black country.
And we thrive.
And we're still thriving, Nangu Dogotela, author, Kumandi.
A whole
lawyer from USA. How was USA, by the way? Did they kick you? Did Donald kick you?
No, USA was great.
Okay.
I think, it would be remiss for us as a literary podcast to not ask you, like, what are some of the books that have changed your life?
Well, okay. I think the autobiography of Malcolm X, I think it's one book that I discovered very late, but it's the book that, it changed me in many ways. It moved me in many ways. When I read Memoirs of a Burn Free by Malaika Wazania, it kept me, even before I wrote, like when I said I wanted to write, and I was like, who has ever written like at your age? And I looked at Malaika, and she was 22. She was younger than me when she got published by Jack Hanna in 2014, and she pushed me, and I think it also changed me as well. And Kaya Dlangas, to quote myself. And recently there's Born a Crime by Trevor, of which the title, it's
Born in
similar.
Chains,
Born
yeah.
in Chains, yeah. We were all born. Those are the
And do you think that the book that Malaika wrote and the book that you wrote are in conversation with each other? So it's like people should read them together, essentially.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. But with Malaika, what I thought, because, as a writer, I can just share with you. As a writer, when you're reading other books, you are in this state of saying, you know what, you are lying, or this one sucks, or you know what, you're not honest. That's not the reality. So with Malaika, she went like to a white school while she was staying in the township. So for me, I was like, but I've never read a book by somebody who like went to a township school, a rural school. So why don't I write about that? So it was more counteractive.
So
it was
also,
supporting. So
it's interesting because this is what Alma said earlier. She was speaking about like how blackness is not monolithic. So it's interesting that you and Malaika grew up in various
both born frees.
Yeah, both born frees in different trajectories, right?
Yeah.
But the things that you've experienced are very similar.
Yeah, true.
Because systems they're not yielding. They're still the same.
Relenting.
And
Whiteness is unrelenting.
So I mean, from
the debate that we have is wrong, who is more colonial? Like the debate that I would have with Malaika would be like, you went to a good school, and she'd be like, you don't know how I was treated there.
Oppression Olympics, right? Like we want to compare our oppression
exactly.
Someone must be more oppressed than the other, Instead of saying that like
our
lived experiences are nuanced, that even in those good schools with those good resources, there's still some oppression that exists, and there's some anti-blackness that exists that's also very loud and pronounced. So I mean, from the Cheeky Natives, I think we just want to congratulate you,
on your first book.
Yes.
Thank you,
also,
guys.
it's really cool to see young people writing about relevant things. I think people often speak for born frees, they speak over born frees, people make assumptions about what born frees should or shouldn't be complaining about, and it's refreshing to have someone speak so honestly about their lived experiences, and I think it's important for Black people to write their stories, because even though you write about the abject poverty in Bevula, you still do it in a way which is respectful and honors the people of Bevula. I don't think that it was from a gaze where we're like, woo, shame. We were just like, we were sitting there and we're like, this is their lived experience, and we must honor and respect that, and I think that's very powerful, So at the Cheeky Natives, we have a very interesting
way of rating books,
books, yes.
Even people go to movies, see they rate movies with popcorns and stars. Well, now we are the land committee.
We have a land committee at the Cheeky Natives, yes.
Comprised of Elma and myself. So after we read books, we allocate land. We give people land. So that when the land comes, you'll come to this land committee.
I thought you guys were gonna give me the land. So you're saying when it comes,
it will come because it's coming.
You told us the land is coming.
It's coming. So when it comes, just come fetch your title deed.
When the chains have fallen.
Clinton
all of
and
them.
chain.
I mean, before we get to the land rating, I have a very interesting question. So your first name is?
My first name is Wisani. Wisani Clinton Chauke.
And why did you decide to write Clinton on your book?
Yeah, you see, I get that question like on a very hostile way to say, you know what, you are fighting against colonialism and all those things, but you still use Clinton as a first name. I mean, that question to me, I think I would escalate it and I would debate further to say, you're wearing Daniel Hector, which is a white man. So why are you wearing, why don't you go back to, we have to accept that, a certain culture won at some point, and, we are where we are now. We can't correct everything. And some debates are not worth having, as in the names and everything. So I grew up being called Clinton, you know, so I can't all of a sudden say Wisani because I'm writing a book. I was not called Wisani growing up. Very few people called me Wisani. So I tend to stay with my colonial name, and maybe on the second book I will use Wisani.
Just to specify.
Or maybe not, Joyce, because maybe this is a radical act of reclamation that you're taking this name, which should be like a colonial entity, and you're writing anti-colonial things. You know, here is a Clinton writing about why he's an angry born free, and there's an act of reclamation in doing that. And maybe there really is no need to rename yourself other than what you've chosen to be called.
But I get like hard pressed on that. Like people will begin interviews by, why are you Clinton? And then I would, try to be optimistic, like Bill Clinton. They'll be like, no, why? And they want that answer to say, but I can't change it. I can't change it. So Julius is Julius Malema, but his other name is Sillo. So why don't you go and ask Julius? Go and ask Julius.
So I think, where was that suburb of Miss Naidu?
No, it's what Vaterkloof friend.
No,
that's Lodiam, Mrs. Naidu's.
No, but the suburb that you described, which has the beautiful high school where you go there and you're shook. You get there, they even outrun you, they out long jump you. They out exist you, you know?
Baba.
They out textbook you.
Everything.
So Tina at the Chicken Natives.
Okay.
We want to bestow Vaterkloof. I want to just that whole area.
Yeah. You want that new?
We want to give it to you as the Chicken Natives.
Serious?
We're like, here.
Including the high school.
The high school.
We
name it to Wisani High School.
Yes. So at the Chicken Natives, we're giving you Vaterkloof.
You give me a Vaterkloof. So how is it like? Do I go and occupy?
No.
Don't go occupy.
Do not occupy yet.
When the time is right.
When the time is right.
We will let you know.
We will let you know at the land committee. You know, at the land committee at the Chicken Natives, we will let you know.
Okay.
And you'll come and collect your title deed from us.
Man, I would like to be.
And you just have to stay tuned because the land is coming.
Wow.
Just stay tuned.
I would like to be.
Stay ready.
Am I a resident or am I governor or something?
It's your land. You decide.
Wow.
You can fetch the people from Shongo.
From Bevula.
From Bevula, you can fetch them to Vaterkloof. You can fetch your friends from Robin Crest.
Right.
It's yours. Bonke, zonke. The land is yours.
So what is the next step for the first-time author?
As in, like, when is the next book and
stuff like that? I don't know. If you're planning to write a book, like what can we look forward to?
Actually, I think for now I'm not busy with anything. I just want to rest, and that's the first thing first, and see how this book does, because I saw any progress in how people are reacting in the sales and everything, just to see how this one goes, and then from there that's where we're gonna see what I write another one, or I focus in mining, or I'm just gonna also go for land, go and fight for the land and stuff. But yeah, for now, I'm not busy with writing. So if I would write, I would maybe write for the columns or contribute to the chicken natives. I don't know if you guys have like those.
Hey, maybe you're telling us we receive it. We receive it.
You speak like you're from church. That's how they took our land.
But this is how we're taking our land back. You must
use that same.
So, where do people get a hold of you? Do you have social media? Like, how can people get a hold of you if people want to thank you? Hey, you inspired me. I learned so much. How do people do that?
No, it's sad, man. Because I don't, as I said in the book, like Facebook and Twitter, I think social media, like I'm not a fan. But now,
I feel in Japan.
Yeah, now I feel a need to, because I've got a product out and I need to contact people. And I was with Nick yesterday. He said I should open a Facebook account or a Twitter account so that people can get hold of me.
And an Instagram account.
Instagram. What is that? It sounds like a measurement.
It's a measurement.
It's a measurement, exactly.
Okay.
It is true. So yes, I mean, I'm certain that your book is going to touch a lot of people. Like we at the Cheeky Natives are certain that your book is going to touch a lot of people. As Alma said earlier, it's not only a book by a Born Free, but it's about relevant things that are happening right now. So from the Cheeky Natives, we'd like to say thank you for writing. And then also like all the best. And if you're writing another book, you got our number. So just call us up and be like, hey, Cheeky Natives, I want to sit in conversation with y'all again.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, it's just a big thank you from the Cheeky Natives. We really enjoyed your book, even though we felt quite enraged in the most, you know, most buildings are still standing. So
and the statues.
Some are falling,
some
bit
are
by
falling,
bit by bit, you know. But I think it's just a massive congratulations. It's always great to see young black people stepping confidently into these spaces, you know, and telling their truths and doing so unapologetically. So from the Cheeky Natives, congrats. We look forward to seeing more of your work. We look forward to seeing you on social media. This time we don't have to lie about being in Japan. But all the best, indeed, all the best. And thank you to everybody who's listening to the Cheeky Natives. We look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Yes, bye.
Thank you for the land.